The Horn Frog Podcast. Let's talk sports with Coach Dub. The Horn Frog Podcast. Good morning, gentlemen. This is Coach Dub coming to you live from downtown Fort Worth at Billy Bob's, Texas, with your Horn Frog Podcast. This Horn Frog Podcast, we're going to talk about the SEC top performances and top teams for year 10. This episode of your Horn Frog Podcast is brought to you proudly by Billy Bob's, Texas. Drink specials every day, live music every Thursday through Sunday, so come on out to Billy Bob's and do some line dancing and shake a leg. SEC top performances on the season. We're going to look at quarterbacks first. West Virginia quarterback Duke Wadsworth went 154 of 209 for 73%. He also had 48 passing touchdowns where he led the nation. He threw 9 interceptions, but he averaged 305.9 yards per game. And he had 3,977 passing yards, which led the nation. He had 65 carries, 368 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had a QB rating of 300.7, which again led the nation. Now we're going to jump over to Arkansas. Quarterback Dwayne Moses, 181 to 273 for 66%. He passed for 3,135 yards. He had 39 passing touchdowns, which tied him for 4th in the nation. He threw 13 interceptions, and he averaged 241.2 yards per game. Looking at running backs in the SEC, West Virginia running back Vernon Gay, 2,784 rushing yards, where he led the nation. He had 8.8 yards per carry, 40 rushing touchdowns, where he again led the nation. He averaged 214.2 yards per game, where again he led the nation. And he had 597 yards after contact, good for 4th in the nation. Now we're going to look over the next running back is Arkansas running back Dalton Stephen. He had 255 carries for 2,496 yards. What a replacement for Tremaine Jesus Darrisaw was Dalton Stevens, where he was 2nd in rushing yards this season. He also averaged 9.8 yards a carry, tied for 1st in the nation. He had 25 rushing touchdowns, which tied him for 3rd in the nation, and he averaged 192 yards rushing a game for 2nd in the nation. Now let's look at our wide receivers or receiving for the SEC. West Virginia wide receiver Dwayne Brink. He only had 36 receptions, but he had 1,479 receiving yards and 22 receiving touchdowns and averaged 113.8 yards per game. Other notable wide receivers in the SEC, UCF wide receiver Danny Kirkendall, 42 receptions, 823 yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns. Now we're going to look to the defensive side of the ball. Your top tacklers in the SEC, UCF middle linebacker Earl Peters had 96 tackles, which placed him at 6th in the nation. He had 7 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 3 pass breakups. Your other top tacklers in the SEC, Florida middle linebacker Danny Gales, 84 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 6 pass breakups. Now let's look to your sack leaders in the SEC this season. UCF defensive end Jace Tyler. He had 15 sacks, folks, which only made him tied for 7th in the nation. He also had 51 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries. A great season for Jace Tyler. Other sack leaders in the SEC, Florida defensive tackle C.J. Quinton. He had 11 sacks. He also had a fumble recovery and a safety on the season. Now your top interception leaders for the SEC this season, West Virginia cornerback Shakir Stewart had 9 interceptions, which tied him for 2nd in the nation. He had 226 interception yards, 1 defensive touchdown. He also had 52 tackles, 3 tackles for loss and a sack, 2 pass breakups, and 0 catches allowed this season. West Virginia cornerback Kevin Session also had 9 interceptions, tying his teammate for 2nd in the nation. He had 156 interception return yards, 2 defensive touchdowns. He also added 48 tackles, 7 pass breakups, and just like Shakir Stewart, the West Virginia quarterbacks combined for 0 catches allowed this season. That, folks, is amazing. Looking to the top offensive in the SEC, their top offenses. Once again, West Virginia. How about it? Folks, I'm sorry, I got to stop right there because the only thing going through my head when I read West Virginia again is West Virginia, take me home. and they did, to the tune of 7,514 total yards as they led the nation in total yards. They had 3,977 passing yards, which was good for 8th in the nation. But their 3,537 rushing yards led the nation. They also threw for 48 passing touchdowns where they tied first in the nation. Then they also had 47 rushing touchdowns where once again they led the nation. And they scored 51.6 points per game, leading the nation. They also had 322 first downs where they came in second in the nation. Other top offenses in the SEC, that's going to be Arkansas. Woo! Talking about shooey pigs. The Hogs were rolling. And they got 6,519 total yards for 4th in the nation. They threw the ball for 3,241 passing yards. They also rushed for 3,242, which was good for 2nd in the nation. They had 39 passing touchdowns, tied for 7th. And they had 40 rushing touchdowns, which put them in 4th place in the nation. They also scored 48.5 points per game, where they came in 3rd in the nation. And they had 285 first downs on the season, good for 4th in the nation. Top defenses of the SEC. Florida, 3,772 total yards, 2,901 passing yards, 871 rushing yards, where they placed 3rd in the nation in defensive rushing. They also had 43 sacks where they came in 9th in the nation, 5 fumble recoveries, and 21 interceptions where they came in 10th in the nation. Other notable SEC defenses, Texas Tech, 3,943 total yards given up, 2,776 passing yards, 1,167 rushing yards. They had 35 sacks. They also had 8 fumble recoveries and 20 interceptions where they came in 11th in the nation. Turnover differential, folks, in the SEC. Here we go, West Virginia, take me home. West Virginia, plus 29 in turnover differential, leads the nation again. 42 takeaways by West Virginia, leads the nation again. 40 interceptions by West Virginia, leads the nation again. And they also had 2 fumble recoveries. That West Virginia team is looking good, folks, and they're looking to make a deep run in the playoffs this season. Arkansas comes in at plus 11 behind West Virginia with turnover differential. They had 27 takeaways on the season, tied for 12th. They had 22 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries. Texas Tech slides in 3rd at plus 7 turnover differential with 28 takeaways, which is good for 11th in the nation. They also had 20 interceptions and 8 fumble recoveries. That's my breakdown for the SEC for year 10, folks. This is Coach Dub signing off from Billy Bob's. Until next time.